Hoof listeners, what's going on? Welcome into the Hoof podcast on this late night edition. As Anthony and I are going to do our yearly tradition, it's third year now, that we are going to predict every single division. This is a fun time for us. I will go through every division in the AFC, every division in the NFC, and predict our in order, exact, some people call it, division finishers, right? So whoever wins the division and also who finishes second, third, and fourth. So welcome in with us. I know it's been a very busy summer, especially August. It's been a very busy August.
I know, right? We've been in and out, going back and forth. One of us is here, one of us isn't. Now we're both here.
Yes.
Kicking it into gear. The season starts next week. Next week at this time, NFL football is on, ladies and gentlemen. That is unbelievable.
Yes.
That's awesome. The season is upon us. It came quickly. That's what she said. But yeah, it's here. I mean, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Football.
Yeah, it's here now. We'll have a show next week before the game. Typically, if you haven't listened to the Hoof podcast before, if you have, you understand what we do. But if you haven't, we go through all the picks for the week. We'll get you ready for Sunday, picking against the spread every single game. Also, we will talk Bills, kind of get into the analysis of the Cardinals versus Bills week 1, but it is quick turnaround. Then we have the Miami game Thursday night,
which I will be at. So we're going to have to figure that one out because I'll be there for that game. So.
Right. We'll have to do some, we've done it before, podcast from the stadium, pop in, pop out type thing. That might be fun. But yeah, be sure to tune into the Hoof podcast. It's going to be fun times in the next few weeks. And this starts tonight. So first thing we got to get into is these roster cuts. I know there's some of the other shows got into these. I just think there wasn't a ton of surprises for me. I think Justin Shorter was a surprise cut for me. Will Clapp, I think I mentioned to you, a little surprising.
Surprise cut or surprise that he didn't make the practice squad for Shorter?
Surprise cut, I think.
Really? You thought he was going to make the roster?
Well, I mean, maybe not.
As a special teams guy?
I guess that, surprise cut, not make the practice squad, because I think a lot of us were kind of excited about Justin Shorter. And I know he's a late round draft pick, but he was a draft pick. And big body, right? You saw him do work in Florida with Anthony Richardson. We thought there's comparisons with Josh Allen and Anthony Richardson. Thought that would transfer to the NFL. Didn't see him last year due to injury, but I mean, I think a lot of people were excited about Justin Shorter and him not making it at all, not making the practice squad. I think was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, for me, that one wasn't as surprising, but there were, I mean, mostly this roster is intact. I did the roster special last week on Friday, on Built in Buffalo. And I said then that no matter who ends up on this roster, it's good enough to win a Super Bowl. All right. Well, good enough, because these spots that we're talking about are, 50, 51, 52, 53rd man on the roster, right? Not likely to see big time playing time, more likely to be specialists on the team, those kind of roles, right? But there still were surprises. I mean, yeah, you mentioned a couple of them. I think the biggest one that Bills Mafia was surprised about was Daquan Hardy not making the active roster, and just being straight up cut as well. He did end up making it to the practice squad, which is great. Bills didn't have any players picked up or claimed from waivers, so we were able to get most of our guys back that they wanted. And it's a good place to be for the Bills, right? That one definitely made me surprised just because of his defensive play alone. I mean, they did keep saying, he's our return guy, and I thought he did well enough. Of the people we saw returning, he was the best one that I thought. Obviously, the Bills go out and trade for somebody we didn't even have on the board or on the radar.
That's always
at
play,
the time.
Right?
And that's a bit surprising as well. Although, like you said, we mentioned that way back when I did my 53-man roster prediction in May. That was I did actually pretty darn well on my prediction back then. We'll have to do the direct comparison, but I know most of it off the top of my head that obviously I said the Bills could trade for her return man, but I had Daquan Hardy on the active roster still. And Casey Tuhill's the other one who I did not have making my roster. I had Kingsley on the active roster and said that that could be a spot where we picked up somebody. Again, this is back in May. So, but Kingsley did make it back to the practice squad, which is nice to have a veteran there, and that weird rule where he's apparently now considered an international player because he was born abroad. So we get an extra practice squad spot for putting him there, and nobody can claim him, which is good for the Bills as well. Brandon Beane finding those loopholes still. Yeah. So, I mean, other than those two spots, I mean, everything else was like, yeah, that makes sense to me for the most part. So I'm trying to think if there were any other guys that Bills Mafia was clamoring for, or, had the hype coming in. Zach Davidson, another one where I didn't believe that he would make the roster, but obviously keep your eye on with the injuries, right? If Quentin Morris went to IR, maybe Davidson would have made it. He is on the practice squad. But yeah, again, another guy that people were worried, if we don't give him a spot on the roster, somebody's going to claim him. Well, it's something like less than 2% of the players who get cut, right? Every team is 90-man roster cut to 53. That's a lot of people around the league getting cut, and only like 2% end up getting claimed. So no worries there. He's back on the practice squad. It's a hell of a practice squad, really. I mean, between the veteran guys and the talent in depth, man, I think that's one of the best practice squads we've had in a long time, which is a really great sign for the depth of the team and the protection of, if anything happens, they're prepared.
Right. Yeah, you even have a veteran in the practice squad, Kareem Jackson.
Yeah, right. A long time veteran. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising.
There's 6. You're allowed up to 6. So the Bills max that number out too, right? With 6 guys who are considered veterans on the practice squad, including, I think, Mike White, the quarterback, right?
Mike White. Yeah, good pickup for them.
Yeah, right. Great pickup.
A lot of uncertainty around Mitch Trubisky. I mean, knock on wood, we're not going to have to worry about the backup quarterback. But again, Mike White, I think, is a solid backup. Right.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, we play Dolphins week 2, and that's where he was coming from. So, yeah, we'll have some inside intel there. Yeah. Obviously, whether that really affects things, who knows? But still, it's nice to have that kind of quarterback with experience starting and playing, and just his style of play, I think, is good for a backup quarterback for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. Just to finalize the receiver room, this has been the discussion all offseason, and it's finally here. Like, we know the answer. The Bills stick with 5 receivers: Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Mac Hollins, and MVS.
Right.
I mean, I think you had on your final 53, I think 6
yes,
receivers.
I had Chase Claypool in there, but also said that it wouldn't surprise me if they don't keep 6 or whatever. And obviously with the injury, we knew Claypool wasn't a part of the equation here at the end.
I think it's okay to go with 5 because you have Kincaid, right? I think that's a factor here that we didn't consider that.
And Knox.
That's definitely, it makes sense now. But Knox is he'll play the traditional tight end, but not really. Kincaid lines up at the slot. He takes a
wide
receiver role a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
Something we didn't consider before. Will Clapp gets cut. I think we talked about that a little bit in the offseason. Just that battle, right? It was, let me find the name so I don't mess it up. Pran Granger.
Yeah, Van Granger.
Yeah. There's question marks around him. Ton of experience at center. Would they like him at guard? I think that was a question, and it sounds like they do, right? I think Will Clapp was a center, and then you're also moving Connor McGovern to center. So it's like you had 3 centers on the roster. It just didn't make sense. But I think they like what they saw from Cedric Van Pran Granger.
That's another guy, actually. I also had us cutting Will Clapp and keeping Cedric Van Pran Granger. My wild card in there was that I wanted to keep Keaton Bills, and that obviously did not happen.
Right.
He's not even on
get your jerseys now, or maybe they'll go on discount, but
right. Yeah.
It was a long shot for him.
Forever. Of course it was. Shot. Yes. Yeah. But that was the one bold prediction I had. The rest of them, the offensive linemen, I think I had in there. So, and thank God they moved on from, oh my gosh, now his name's going to escape me, but the 2 veterans that could have made it, got cut. The guard and tackle guy. Oh my gosh, somebody help me out here. I'm drowning. Anyway, so glad they moved on from some contracts that people thought weren't going to be moved the 53 as is, especially the offensive line, right? That our
Oh,
second
guard tackle Lyle Collins.
Lyle Collins, thank you.
Lyle Collins,
Yes.
yep.
Are the Will Clapp did make the practice squad. Yes, somebody just said that in the comments, which is good to have a veteran like that on the practice squad. Great. I love that, right? And if he would have made the roster, I wouldn't have been upset about it. Lyle Collins, on the other hand, he didn't show me anything, and I was very nervous about that. And, some people had concerns about the contract, but thankfully they were able just to say, no, we're moving on. We'd rather have talent on the roster than somebody like that. So I think they did the right thing there. But even our entire backup offensive line looked pretty good in the preseason game against Carolina, giving me confidence that, like, okay, these guys are darn good to, have on this roster as protection and feel like if somebody does go down, it's the next man up mentality for sure.
Yeah, I don't see too many surprises on the offensive line. The final roster: Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, David Edwards, Alec Anderson, Cedric Van Pran Granger. Tackles: Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Ryan Van DeMark, and Taylon Grable.
Grable was the one that he really moved up the depth chart through his play in the preseason and in training camp. So I can't remember if I had him on my 53 back in May or not, but for him to make it, that's really good on him to say, yes, I am good enough to be here, kind of. So yeah. And it's talent, right? We're so good at getting those 6th, 7th round offensive linemen and corners that end up playing pretty well for us. So that's always good.
A couple other names that made the roster: Javen Solomon. I think that was a big.
Oh yeah, Javon Solomon was just he had to. He was another one who balled out.
Right.
Played really well. I've thought all along that he was a lock for the roster. And
they like what they saw from him.
I actually think he's one of the young guys who can get playing time early. I want to see him. Obviously not. They rotate defensive line a lot, and I don't want to see him get 50% of the snaps or anything. But I'd love to see him out there early to start working up, because he has really shown flashes of success there, and use him, opposite or with Von Miller as part of that rotation. That's going to be pretty good.
Right. And you weren't really sure if he was going to beat out Jonathan Kingsley.
Right.
That was kind of the battle.
Kingsley,
right?
Jonathan.
So, Kingsley Jonathan.
Yeah.
So good to see he actually made the roster. He's a draft pick. You like to see that. So he did win that battle. Who else we got here? They went a little heavy in linebacker. A lot of lessons learned from last year. I think they're deeper this year at linebacker than they were last year, and that's with the Matt Milano injury, which you hate to see.
Definitely, yeah.
But yeah, like the room there.
Yeah.
The Buffalo, Joe Anderson.
Right. Yeah. Buffalo
good
Joe.
Good story. But again, if he's playing, it's like, okay, things aren't going well. Right.
Yeah. I mean, Andreessen really, he played so well in that 3rd preseason game, and really by product of the injuries and everything, got his chance and proved it. Talk about a story, man. I mean, not drafted, turned down from even signing as a free agent, just given a scrap. Okay, come in here during a practice session to see what you got. Oh, okay, he's worth a 90-man roster spot as a body, and then working all the way to making the active roster. I mean, no, obviously we did not have that on our bingo card back in May. He wasn't even thought of as a Buffalo Bill back then. So awesome get there for him, and just a cool story. He might be inactive on game day. We'll see. And with the linebacker depth, you definitely expect some special teams contribution. A guy like Nicholas Moreau, we knew that when we signed him. That's part of his specialty, and he can rotate in when needed. So that's just good depth there. And the Bills are going to need it early, right, in the absence of Matt Milano. So we'll see the linebacker depth again, a position that, taking into consideration, did not surprise me that Andreessen made it, and that Moreau did make it, and that Deion Jones was ultimately cut because he was the veteran and consistently was playing with the 3rd team. Like, there was something that he didn't show.
I did notice that as well. It's interesting because this guy was a Pro Bowler. He had some great years in Atlanta, but the career just fell, had the injury and maybe never really recovered from the injury. So yeah, it's you hate when that happens, because the guy played lights out for Atlanta. He was good. He's a solid linebacker for Atlanta, and that was a long time ago now. It seems like in NFL years. So interesting story though. When you're looking at the roster, kind of like raw, you're like, well, this guy has proven himself before, right? So I think a lot of people assume he'd make the roster, and you kind of wonder why he's running with the threes in the preseason. And I think now we know why. It just wasn't. He's just getting outplayed.
Lost.
It seems like.
Yeah, he just lost the coaches. He never really was able to impress enough to get things going, and that's unfortunate. But again, I think with the depth that we have, it was an uphill battle for him in that situation. Starting where he did, even with the injuries.
Ralph Wilson Sr. Back from the dead.
Yes,
looks like Raiders are putting Shorter at tight end.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
This reminds me of the Kelvin Benjamin conversation where he's a chicken wing away from being a tight end.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see how that turns out. I think traditionally you look at some big receivers who transfer to tight end. Not a lot of them succeed, but I think it's worth a shot, right? And again, the Raiders is probably the worst spot for him to try tight end because they have two young tight ends in Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, who look phenomenal. So he probably won't see the field. I feel like that's a tough position for him.
Yeah.
Plus you have to learn a new position so that'll be tough. And it's interesting. Maybe he didn't have the speed, maybe didn't have the separation, whatever it is. It's, it doesn't seem like people see him as a receiver in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't able to, again, impress the coaching staff enough. And after 2 years, right, they saw him and they wanted to see something showing improvement or getting better. And obviously they did not see that to even keep him as a practice squad consideration. And they have 3 receivers total on the practice squad. So, that's been interesting. I guess 4 now, if you count the transaction today. They brought in the guy from Denver finally after he was visiting and then standing in the other room or whatever, waiting for the transaction. So yeah, interesting moves there as well. But again, the big one today was signing the safety Lewis Seen to the practice squad because he had been reported to sign with the Jets, that he was going to the Jets practice squad. And this morning it was like, nope, change of story here. He's coming to Buffalo. And, this is a guy who was a first round pick, very talented, hasn't worked out with him, but change of defense, right? And defensive philosophy, and was a cut because of that. Now, obviously he hasn't lived up to that first round expectation, but man, just to have a talent that good come in, and if he can pick up the defense a little bit, I have a feeling he's going to be a call up in a few weeks of, if he can, again, pick up the playbook and get things down a little bit. We can certainly use bodies at that position right now.
Yeah, I agree. And, let's move over to the bets because, sorry, I'm having some technical issues with our screen that we're about to share, but, yeah, let's check it out here.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So, any last thoughts on the roster?
The other thing I wanted to mention was just that it feels to me, and I've been saying this all off season, with the change in the kickoff rule, I feel like most teams have been keeping their strategy under wraps, right? They haven't been practicing it in the actual games. They've been practicing it behind closed doors, right? So the preseason games, although we've seen it, we haven't really seen what teams are planning to do yet, I don't think. And in that same vein, with the surprises that were on the Bills roster, Daquan Hardy not making it, Tuhill making it, the biggest one was your guy, Darrington Evans, making the IR designated to return slot. So he is going to be on the roster. They're bringing him back, right? They would not put him on there if they did not plan to bring him back. So that tells me that there's interesting. What I think this is these guys are going to have a role on special teams that is impactful, right? Just like the Bills have invested in special teams in the past, that, these guys who we weren't expecting to be there, it's because we have no idea what they have in store for us for this kickoff. And kudos to you, Eric. You're one of the only people I know who actually said Darrington Evans is a legitimate special teams player who could make this roster just to return kicks and punts and everything. And And here he
Yeah,
is.
he's a specialist in that way. And
Yeah.
it's hard to get a running back who's also a kick returner on the roster because like you're looking for additional value outside of kick returns, right? But now that I think you need 2 returners, if I feel like the depth is much bigger
Right.
than it was with 1.
Right.
So guys like Darrington Evans, who have been on practice squads for 4 or 5 years now as a returner, he has a lot of experience now all of a sudden, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's added value there. That's why he makes the roster. I think we were kind of surprised Daquan Hardy didn't make the returner role. I think he showed some flashes in the preseason. Isabella also getting cut. KJ Hamler coming back on the practice squad.
He's on the practice squad.
Still in play. But you like to see that because KJ Hamler's career has just been wild and crazy the last few years with injuries and from team to team. I feel like if a receiver goes down or they have some issues, he could be called up, right? He's a player you could look at just because he has insane speed. You know what I mean? But yeah, who do you think the other starting returner is? We have Darrington Evans.
Well, they traded for the guy from the Jets, right? So he is definitely going to be in that role, although he's listed as a cornerback. I think clearly his role is in the return area.
Codrington,
I think.
Codrington,
Codrington.
Yep.
Braden, something like that. Codrington. He's super fast and he's a return guy. That's what I know about him so far. Obviously,
so
we haven't been watching him. We don't know him, but I think that's definitely what they brought him in for. Well, it is what they brought him in for, to be the main kick return guy. But like you said, there's 2 guys back. I think, we heard what reports Ty Johnson, although he was injured most preseason, so we didn't see him really do that. He could be a guy that they trust. He's done it before for the Bills, so I feel like he could be in play there as well. So there's some depth, but some questions there as well. Who else could they put back? There was talk of, well, will they put Khalil Shakir back there, or will they put, one of the receivers back there? But you can't really afford to do that when that's one of your top wide receivers. I don't want him returning kicks and punts, and risking injury in those situations, even if he was the best returner on the team.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And so that's solidified. And if you predicted the kick returner, then,
I don't think,
kudos to you, because it's almost impossible.
I don't think anybody even knew his name. But
feel pretty good about the roster. Again, I think like most Bills fans, you just want to see it in a live game, right? What's this offense actually going to look like with Curtis Samuel probably being the primary target? What's Keon Coleman's, route running ability in the NFL? I feel like we got a little bit of a sample with that in the preseason. He did play a lot of snaps in the preseason, but what's it look like with Josh Allen? Because one thing that flew off the charts for Bills fans was just the quarterbacks couldn't hit Keon Coleman. I mean, the guy has a huge catch radius and you still can't throw the ball to him. So it's like, really, I think we want to see that. I think defense is in pretty good shape. It's really just kind of worry about the depth at corner, right? The defensive line looked great in the preseason, but I mean,
we all know how you feel about Kaiir Elam, but this is a turnaround year for Kaiir Elam. All right, so
I'd love to see that. And
Ingram, right?
Knock on wood, you don't want to see an injury, but if Kaiir Elam goes in, it's must-watch TV. You know what I mean? You want to see what the kid can do. He's a first-round talent, super athletic, really good man-to-man corner. Been working on zone the last number of years, so you're wondering, is he less of a liability than he was in the previous years that we've seen him in a small sample size? But yeah, that's one thing. But we're not going to see that out the gate, right? It's going to be Benford and Douglas, and then obviously the safety position is one that you want to see.
We don't even know who's starting. We don't even know who's starting.
So we just got to get to week 1. And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
The biggest question in the offseason was receiver. And I think that's now solidified. And something we never talked about is Kincaid really having an impact on how many receivers you keep. I think that's a big piece. But
5 isn't surprising. That's what they kept last year. And again, once we knew Claypool was out, and even when I did my May, I said, having both Claypool and MVS, it wouldn't surprise me if one stuck and one didn't. And in this
Right.
case, that
And
was
we were
already
talking
decided.
special teams, like could Chase Claypool, a big body. He
Could have been that. Yeah.
he
Which
could play
what
special
might
teams.
be might be why like a two-hill makes it. Again, I really
Right.
think those surprises are because they have a specific role on special teams in mind for some of these guys that are more bottom of the depth chart guys.
Right. So yeah, that's the offseason, folks. We are now into football, right?
That's
so
right.
typically what Anthony and I do, we predict every division headed into week 1. Like I mentioned earlier, but next week we'll be making picks for Sunday, going through all the picks. But let's get into the divisional predictions here. Let me know if you need me to zoom in.
I see it pretty well here. Yep. Looks good on my screen. Oh, that's even better. There you go.
There
we can do one division at a time. Nice.
All right, we got to run through this. Usually we did 45-minute shows for every division last year. With family obligations and work obligations, we simply don't have that time.
The
So here we
Cliff
go.
Notes version, right? Like,
yeah. All right, AFC North, which good place to start. This is from DraftKings, but this is probably the most competitive division in the league, and I think you can make a case for every one of these teams to win the division, maybe except for the Steelers. But again, the Steelers find a way, right?
That's right.
So yeah, let's start here. What's your thoughts on the AFC North?
Well, my thoughts are that most people want to crown the Ravens just because they had a great season last year. But remember that their great season in part was due to the fact that all 3 other teams in their division were having quarterback issues, right? And when you have quarterback issues, your teams tend to tank, right? So that was a huge effect on why Baltimore looked record-wise so good and why, they were the 1 seed and had the MVP on their squad, right? So this year, again, though, just like we said last year, this division is going to beat each other up, right? Even if the Steelers have the worst quarterback and the worst team in this division, there's nothing that would, surprise me if they beat all 3 of these divisional opponents once, right? Like they can beat Cleveland, they can beat Cincy, they can beat Baltimore on their best day, right? So that is not like a shocking, revelation of something that could happen. And that being said, that means this division is wide open every year, right? It seems that way. The Browns, again, great defense last year. The quarterback play really let them down. They lost basically all 3 of their best players and still were able to make the playoffs. So you can't count them out. Obviously, they have a big question mark in Deshaun Watson and what he really is. But
yeah, there remains the question for them, right? If you get Deshaun Watson right, if you get Deshaun Watson to 75% of what he was, the Browns are a very good team all of a sudden. I mean, they're winning games with Joe Flacco, who,
that's right,
came in late. So I like their coaching staff, like their offensive head coach knows how to call plays, right? If Nick Chubb doesn't get injured last year, I think they're a little more successful than they were. And if you can, like I said, if you can get Deshaun Watson at 75%, the Browns could be a really good team.
Yeah, so you can't count them out of it, even though this is saying they're plus 550 to win the division, and plus 800 for the Steelers. Those are probably 2 good bets that are here because you're getting paid out more if you, put $10 on it or whatever. It wouldn't surprise me if either team won that. However, getting to my prediction, I talked about 3 of the teams in brief here, but the Cincinnati Bengals are the team that I think are the favorites to win this division and are going to win this division just based on their roster, their experience, and, the circumstances that they had last year are not what they're going into this year. And that really is what tells me that they're ready to take back this division and be the team that comes out on top. Do I expect them to be in contention for the 1 seed and win in 13 games? No, because again, this division is going to beat up on each other. I think the winner of this division gets a max of 11 wins, probably more likely 10, right? So a 10-8 team coming out. The Cincinnati Bengals, to me, are that team. And they also benefit from a little bit of a weaker schedule because of where they finished last year. Last in the division, they have a weaker uncommon opponents with their division rivals. And I really think that's going to help boost them into first place in this division. And again, the rest of it is tough to work out because, they're all good teams. If you ask me now, do the Bengals make the playoffs? I say yes. You ask me, do the Steelers make the playoffs? I say no. But the Ravens and the Browns are really this gray area for me where do all three teams from this division make the playoffs? That's always difficult when all four teams are good. If you have one team that's a stinker, maybe, but for Baltimore and Cleveland to make it is going to be challenging. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Cincinnati and Cleveland are the two teams that make the playoffs, and Baltimore is left in that questionable, does a third team make it from this division or not? Baltimore lost a lot of pieces this offseason, and it's not being talked about enough to me. Yes, they built up, their offense and they have Lamar and whatever pieces you want to say they that contribute there. I just think that, to maintain, they're not going to be able, it's going to be a much bigger challenge for them to maintain what they did last year than it is for these other teams to exceed what they did last year. And that doesn't bode well for them in my mind.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the Ravens really, it came down to some really close games within the divisions to, give them the one seed.
Still
right?
Very close, even though they had no quarterback.
But they came through on it, right? So they get the credit for that. Will that carry over to this year? Me personally, I think yes. I'm picking the Ravens to win the division. I just feel like the last few years, the Ravens have really built their team the right way, right? You bring in 2 number 1 receivers, Bateman, Zay Flowers. Bateman needs a little longer to develop, but we already see production from Zay Flowers, right? Then you bring in a Derrick Henry who had running back problems for years with injuries. I feel like Derrick Henry is going to be very reliable for them. And with Lamar and Derrick Henry in the backfield, that is a nightmare.
How durable is he?
Let's not forget about Mark Andrews, right, coming off injury. But again, durability is always a question with any player in the NFL.
True.
But again, they are absolutely loaded on offense. I feel like they've built their team around Lamar to support Lamar the right way. In my opinion, it's the best model how to build a roster of the last 3 or 4 years. Right. So I'm high on the Ravens this year. I have the Bengals number 2. I think Joe Burrow comes back with vengeance, but we've had some drama with them, right? With T. Higgins drama with the holdout.
Yeah.
Getting franchise
tagged. Not a very well
managed
managed team. Yeah.
Right.
Obviously.
Right. I mean, Joe Mixon's moving on. So, I think he was a big part of their offense. Still think they're going to have a solid defense. Still going to figure it out because you have Joe Burrow. So
and again, look at their schedule. 2. Look at their first 8 games. It would not surprise me if they went 7-1 in their first 8 games. Their schedule is by far the easiest in this division, and I think that's again what boosts them, especially in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think it's going to be very close with the Browns. We're talking difference of 1 game between maybe these 3 teams, 1 or 2 games.
Yeah.
So these divisional games are really important. The Browns, though, I mean, I'm putting them 3rd, but they could. I would not be shocked if they win the division. Right? They're talented, especially on defense. One of the most talented defenses in the league. It's just the quarterback situation, and that's kind of the argument with the Steelers as well. The Browns and the Steelers, if they could figure out quarterback, they're competitive instantly. But they just haven't been able to do that. And like with the Browns, we've expected that the last 2 seasons and just haven't seen it. So what makes you think they're going to do it this year? Nick Chubb had the huge injury last year. If he comes back healthy, again, that helps him. But again, it's not easy to come back to the player you were, after an injury like that. So that's kind of where I'm at. I got the Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Steelers.
Interesting. Yeah. So we differ there. I have Bengals, Browns, Ravens, Steelers, with the Ravens being a cusp playoff team. So yeah, we'll see.
All right, moving on to the next one, not in order. NFC West.
Interesting.
What are your thoughts here? We got the defending NFC champions with the 49ers. Brandon Ayuk just signed his deal. We have the Rams, Matt Stafford and company still there, right? Seahawks, very interesting to me with the coaching change, and then the week 1 opponent for the Bills, the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah. So here, I think a lot stays the same here for me. The 49ers are one of the teams that I will say, to me, are all in this season. And this Ayuk move is the latest one saying, look, we got to pay these guys. We got to move things around. They're going to have a lot of trouble next year because they have a loaded cap situation, a lot of guys to renew. They're going to be, their defense, has been elite, but they're going to have issues there. Anyway, this season, that team, that roster is still loaded. You know, they've been to 2 Super Bowls with this team. They are good enough to get there again. And in this division, although you have, you know, the Rams and the Cardinals certainly better than they were last year. They have Kyler Murray back. They had the number 1 overall pick in Harrison, or number 1 player in the draft. Now, so I expect some improvement there. Team like the Rams, you lose the best player in football in Aaron Donald, or who most thought was, right? And so that leaves a huge gaping hole on your defense. Then they trade away their leading tackler for beans, you know, after he says, no, I didn't ask to get traded. So weird situation going there in the defensive side. The offensive side, I still believe, can produce in the run game and the pass game. Obviously, with, you know, guys like Puka Nacua and Stafford leading the way there. Cooper Kupp, yeah, coming off injury, he should be, you know, recovered and do well. And their run game is strong as well. So their offense is good enough to win games, but their defense, I think, is going to end up being a liability. Unless something crazy happens, I don't know that I can predict them to be, you know, a playoff team or a contender, especially from what's happened the last week or so. However, the Seahawks, to me, are still a really good roster. Change in coach, right? So change of philosophy a little bit there. But, you know, still have Geno Smith. Again, last year I couldn't stop praising this offense. Are you kidding me? You got 2 good running backs. You got 3 great wide receivers. You've got a decent quarterback. You should be able to win games just with that. The defense, again, is a big question, but I think, you know, under this new coaching staff, they'll at least have something to, you know, stake their claim to in that defense. Again, because the offense should pretty much run itself with the guys they have. And that's going to put them in contention to be there against the 49ers. But my order is exactly as predicted. Or, well, no, not exactly, because the Rams are over the Seahawks. I actually have it 49ers winning, Seahawks in second place, Rams, and then Cardinals, with the Seahawks contending for a wild card spot there.
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of your points are the same as mine. I have the same exact order. I'm high on the Seahawks. I mean, the only thing that's holding me back is the coaching. Right, Sean McVay, amazing coach. Not real sure about Mike McDonald for Seattle, but Seattle's roster absolutely stacked. Right, their cornerbacks, that cornerback room might be the best in the league. And then, you know, Kenny Walker, if he can stay healthy, they've had a lot of production out of him. Obviously, the receivers, we don't need to have that conversation, but it really comes down to Geno Smith for them. If he can just manage the game, I think they can run the ball effectively. I think they're going to have. You know, I think they're going to win football games. A lot of the same points with you with the Rams. Again, it's Sean McVay and Matt Stafford. They're going to make a lot of magic happen, but can the defense keep up with that, right? Can they do their part? A lot of question marks there. And some people are high on the Cardinals this year. I mean, if you're a betting person, you know, the Cardinals could be a little sneaky. It's going to take a while for Marvin Harrison to get up to speed.
Right. Rookie.
And Zay Jones with the suspension, right? I think sets them back a little bit. But again, sneaky good roster there with the Cardinals, right? Might take a little bit to get going. That's where we're at.
Yeah, especially with the competition they're facing in this division. That's such an uphill battle for them that even when they are at full strength, I don't think they're good enough to beat any of those 3 teams. Doesn't mean they're not going to during the year, but I'm certainly not going to predict it at this point.
Fair enough. All right, next one, NFC East. Philadelphia Eagles minus 125, as they should be. Dallas Cowboys plus 170. Washington Commanders plus 900. And the Giants last by
everybody is
plus
crapping on the New York Giants, right? We talked about this when we talked about, you know, chances to make the playoffs or whatever. The Giants are one of the best bets out there right now. I just cannot believe these odds. In terms of, you know, what you could make back for betting them and the team that they have. People say, oh, their defense is terrible. Oh, their offense, you know, Daniel Jones, whatever. I actually think they deserve a lot more respect than they're being given. Now, they're still a far step behind the Eagles and Cowboys, I think, in terms of consistency and top-level talent and all of those things, right? The Eagles are the other team in the NFC that I think are all in, really in the NFL. The Eagles also pushed all their chips into the center this year, because they're going to face big cap implications and have to make some tough decisions going into next year. But this roster is absolutely loaded top to bottom. We saw the Eagles last year with a darn good roster, pretty similar to this one, and they collapsed under pressure and just fell apart because of their coaching and everything else and the strife that was there. Hopefully they've got that in check this year, and now can live up to the expectations that they have in front of them. But yeah, I'm taking the Eagles to win this division. I'm taking the Cowboys to finish in second, the Giants in third, and the Commanders in fourth. That doesn't mean I'm not high on the Commanders, because I do like their young talent. I do think they're going to be an upset team this year. They're going to beat a lot of teams they shouldn't. I don't know that they'll be favored in many early on, at least. And the Giants, again, I'm not counting them out. I'm not counting them out of being a absolute surprise team this year. Personally, I'm not predicting them to make the playoffs, but with the odds the way they are, that's what makes me, as a betting man, say, are you kidding? They have a chance at plus 2,000, so not to win the division, but whatever the odds were, pretty high as well to make the playoffs.
Right.
So,
and I think it's less about the Giants. Like, they're kind of the same team they were. The division got better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The Commanders.
Daniels going to the Commanders.
Exactly.
I mean, that offense is going to be a lot better than they have been in years past. They have a good running game. They have solid receivers. The Cowboys, I mean, Dak's put up like some of the most passing yards every single year, right? CD Lamb getting paid. I mean,
but
not much change there. Maybe got a little step back from a roster standpoint, but not much change. And the Eagles are literally stealing players from these teams, right? They took Saquon Barkley from the Giants, Jahan Dotson from the Commanders. It's wizard. Their GM is a wizard. I don't know how you do that, but you're taking. I thought Jahan Dotson had some of the most upside for the Commanders, right? You're looking at this receiver going, this guy's shown flashes. I just don't understand the trade.
And he goes to a loaded,
you know what I mean?
Eagles wide receiver core. So, I mean, they're going to be passing it to everybody.
It's so surprising to me that would happen. But,
yeah,
it just seems like here we are preseason, headed into the season. The Eagles have this division won already just for these moves. You know what I mean? It's demoralizing for these other teams. So I have the Eagles number 1. Cowboys number 2. I think Dak's good enough to carry the team and win some games, right? I have the Commanders number 3. Again, I think it's going to be a slow start for them with a rookie quarterback, but I think Jaden Daniels can make some plays for them, and I think they're going to win a lot of games down the stretch. And then I have the Giants last, just because I'm not sure who you turn to, especially on offense. Who are we turning to? Who's leading this team? Seems like the fan base is kind of turning against Daniel Jones. We saw another pick 6 in the preseason. That's not helping things. But I feel like Saquon Barkley was that guy you turn to, and we just don't have that anymore. So they want it to be Malik Neighbors, but again, he's a rookie. He's going to take some time, right?
So you and I, Giants. It seems like even if the Giants finish in third place in this division, like I had them, Dable and company's jobs are on the line, right? Like that is right.
It's a little bit out of their control too. Darren Waller retires. Saquon. You don't want to overpay running backs. You just can't do it.
We'll see. But it's New York too. The high pressure there. I mean, that's a story for another day. But it's certainly, our Bills relevant talk because that's our former offensive coordinator and former assistant GM. So, I mean, I do think they are, a team that can win games, but they might be in trouble there. And it'll depend on the Commanders. It seems like you're a little higher on the Commanders than I am. I love their roster, and I'm going to be cheering for them this year. And the Dallas Cowboys, I am so down on them just because of the chaos in the front office when the coach comes out and says bad things about your quarterback. That's never, or the GM owner says bad things about your quarterback. That's never going to be a good thing. And I have real questions about that running game. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott looking like a school bus out there,
Right.
And then you've got you just signed Delvin Cook, who couldn't get it done as a backup in his last 2 spots, and now you're putting him in a situation where he could get meaningful snaps for this team. That's not a good place to balance that passing game and Dak. You're putting a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott and that passing game to replicate what he did last year in order to win games. And obviously that defense is really good. Not much has changed there, but vulnerable in the run game. Can they change that this year? I think Dallas is in for a rude awakening of being around 9 wins and maybe getting lucky because they're in the NFC to make the playoffs.
Right. And 9 is probably enough to be second in this division, right?
Yeah.
But just the argument for the Commanders real quick before we move on. I thought last year they had a really good first half of the season, right? I think they were a competitive team the first half of the season. News of the team's sale came out. They know their coach is going to get fired, right? And they lost their last 9 games, right? Longest losing streak in the league. But now I feel like there's more energy there with Dan Quinn. Coming from Dallas, he knows that playbook in and out. I expect them to get at least one win from Dallas against Dallas. And then Jaden Daniels is an electrifying player, Heisman winner. So it just reamps the locker room. It reamps the fan base. So I think the Commanders could be competitive here. All right. NFC South. I got the Atlanta Falcons minus 130.
Should have been a month ago.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers plus 320. The Saints plus 400. Carolina plus 1,100.
When the Falcons signed Kirk Cousins, you know this. I said they're going to win this division. They're going to be in the NFC Championship game. So, spoiler alert, I have the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC Championship game, and I definitely have them winning this division where, Tampa Bay basically lucked into the winning it last year, although they have talented players, not saying they don't, but, the rest of the teams fell apart, basically. The Saints and the Panthers, 2 teams that are, in my mind, at the bottom of the league based on their quarterback play. The Carolina Panthers should be better than they were last year, which, is a very, very low bar to begin with. But I still don't see them competing with the likes of Atlanta and Tampa Bay very well. Maybe the Saints. And the Saints, as long as Carr is your quarterback and the cap situation there that they've continued to kick down the road is now, leaking out onto that talent of the active roster. And you don't want to be a team that sits mediocre for an extended point of time, aka our Buffalo Bills for the 17-year playoff drought, right? We never could go 3-13. It was always, 7-9 or whatever to keep us in the middle of the road. And that's what the Saints are looking at in my mind if they continue on this path. But the Atlanta Falcons, absolutely elite team in my mind. When you put Kirk Cousins' ability with that new offense with Bijan and the receivers they have there, Drake London. I mean, I absolutely love the Atlanta Falcons this year and the defense, right? That's why I said at the beginning, I wish I bet them sooner because what do? They go out and sign 2 of the best, or sign and trade for 2 of the best defensive players that were available in Judon and Simmons. And, that team is now stacked on both sides, I think. And it might take them a little while to get rolling and find that chemistry. But I am really, really high on the Atlanta Falcons this year, and you're going to see that throughout the year in my picks, I think. And the Bucs are a team where, although they have a lot of consistency and, kept their guys, they're a team that's getting older, that has limitations at the quarterback position in my mind. And, that's going to hold you back from getting over the hump of a team that is just more talented on paper in the Atlanta Falcons. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with this division anyway. I think only Atlanta makes the playoffs.
Okay, can you read your order out one more time? It's Falcons, Bucs, Saints.
Yes, Panthers? Falcons, Bucs, Saints, Panthers. So I'm chalk in this one according to these numbers.
Yeah, and I'm the same exact way, and I think most people will be. The Bucs do have potential to win this division, right? If they can build off what they did last year, they have a real shot at, overtaking the Falcons if the Falcons stumble. But it seems like from a roster talent standpoint, it's the Falcons' division to lose. It'd be surprising if they lost.
Right.
And are we going to see Michael Penix? That's a big question around the Falcons, right? If they do go with the Michael Penix route, you could see some struggling, right? Because he's a rookie and it takes time. And Baker Mayfield's been in the league a number of years. They have a great receiving core with Tampa Bay, as we all know. Tampa last year was the worst rushing offense in the league, though. So if we can see some sort of improvement this year, they have a chance. But we know that Atlanta can run the ball. We expect them to pass the ball. Kyle Pitts, you would hope would get some sort of production this year.
After last year, right?
Kirk Cousins will definitely get production out of them, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a coaching change, it's a culture, but Raheem Morris has been around the league a long time. He's a great hire, in my opinion. So I think the Falcons are the team to beat. I have the same exact order as you. The Panthers, just to me, I just don't see the Bryce Young. He just seems harder for him because he's a smaller smaller athlete.
And he's dealing with
Right.
The team isn't built up around him, right? And it's tough to get over that hump.
Sure. He's kind of a quarterback that needs a lot of support. He could succeed if he gets that. But is that this year? I don't see it, right? I think that's another year of building for them. So,
do you have the Bucs making the playoffs as a wild card?
I don't.
Hmm.
Yeah, Falcons only for this division. But it's going to be close. All right, here we go. AFC East. This is kind of what everyone's tuning in for, right? Here we go.
All right.
Vegas has the Jets at plus 165. They are the favorite to win the division.
What? When did that change?
Yes.
What?
Kind of funny. There was a report that came out that said it's kind of a shit show over there.
Yes, today alone.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we got the Jets at plus 165. They're the favorite. The Bills are plus 195.
DraftKings.
Dolphins plus 205, and then the Patriots plus 2,500, which is a stretch because that's a big number for the Patriots, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I don't think they have a shot at winning the division even close this year because the other three teams are that darn good. But the Jets being the favorite, I cannot believe this. Again, you've heard me rage on this show about how overhyped the Jets are because they have a quarterback who the last time we saw him play a full season sucked. Let's be blunt. He sucked when he played for Green Bay. They trade for him. He plays one whole snap and gets injured. Now he's 41 years old, going out on crutches, doesn't show up for camp, doesn't show up to play with his guys, revamps the whole roster to his liking. I mean, this team is in chaos, and they continue to be. And Aaron Rodgers is just not a team guy. And when you have somebody like that, it's just going to divide up the whole roster. And you're going to take what is a good core, for example, their defense. We know their defense is really good. We know they have two elite players on offense in the running back Breece Hall and the wide receiver Garrett Wilson. You know, if those guys were on any other team with a fixture of stability, with a really good defense, you'd say that team has a chance to win the Super Bowl. But this is the New York Jets. And what they've shown us is, despite all the talent, despite everything they have, they find a way to fall on their face and suck. And to me, the Jets are a third-place team in this division to the Buffalo Bills, who are consistently good and have to prove it. And, you know, you have to prove you can beat them. And then the Miami Dolphins, who have been up and coming and right at the tail end and in it for the whole season, but crash and burn at the end, right? So I expect more of the same from this division. Buffalo Bills win the division, have the best roster, have the best coach team, have the best stability. The Miami Dolphins finish in second, make the playoffs. They're going to be there. And the Jets in third place by the skin of their teeth because the Patriots are that bad. That's the only reason the Jets finish in third. It's because the Patriots are that bad, right? Otherwise, I'd be predicting the Jets to finish in last place.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, and I cannot believe that DraftKings has these odds right now. I'm definitely going to go and make a bet on the Bills to win the division because that's the best odds I've seen yet. I think plus 185 was when we looked at it months ago. I think almost all three teams, the Miami Jets and Buffalo, were plus 185 then.
Right.
And now we're plus 195. So, I mean, it's crazy that this is where we're at.
And I'm having a little bit of deja vu because we had the same exact argument last year around this time.
Yeah.
Headed into the season. And, you know, the Aaron Rodgers injury really impacted the Jets season. Like, let's go back and think about a Jets game mid-season. Their defense was so good.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably the best defense in the league for a lot, most of the season. But the offense couldn't do anything for them. Right?
And if they had a quarterback whose heart isn't in the game, who's throwing pick sixes, just like he did last time he played,
sure,
I was more upset about the injury last year than Jets fans because I wanted to see him fail with that team so that they could be proven to be the team that they were. Right?
They are who we thought they were.
Exactly. Now they have a built-in excuse. This year, as long as he stays healthy, I think they still suck because of the chaos, because he's not in with his teammates, because they don't know what they're doing. Yes, the defense will win them games. Yes, they'll have a couple of good games here and there, assuming everybody stays healthy. But I just don't think they're good enough to beat Miami or Buffalo at this point.
Yeah, it's a tough conversation. This is one of the bigger debates across the league is who's better, the Jets or the Dolphins, because the Dolphins were really good last year.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they didn't beat any playoff teams, but man, they were putting up points like crazy. So it's like the ultimate defense versus the ultimate offense. It seems to be the argument. And I feel like the difference this year is if Aaron Rodgers goes down, you have Tyrod Taylor. You can still win games. If you're the Jets roster, you can still win games if you just take care of the football and convert a few first downs every game.
Yes.
They couldn't do that last year. That's the difference. I think the Jets are a good team. I think ultimately their defense is good enough to win more games than Miami. Maybe not head-to-head, but I think they will win more games. And I have the Jets second in the division. When you have Josh Allen, look, he's just different than the other quarterbacks in this division. And that's the difference, right? And that's kind of where we're at until proven otherwise. So I have Bills, Jets, Dolphins third in a tight race, and then the Patriots last, just because it seems like a development year for Drake May.
Do you have all three making the playoffs then? Because I have the Bills winning, Dolphins making it, Jets not. Do you have Jets and Dolphins not?
I gotta look at it again. I think one team out of the AFC West, right, the Chiefs. We're gonna have probably 2, maybe 3 out of the AFC North.
Mm-hmm.
And
that only leaves one more wild card team then. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's 2 out of the AFC East. Yeah.
Okay. So you would not have the Dolphins making the playoffs.
It'd be a tight race, but I think the Jets get more wins. And that's if Rodgers stays healthy.
Yes.
They're just stacked. They've been drafting high they're like Cleveland, right? You've been drafting in the top 5, top 10 for 10 straight years. Your roster's stacked. I think their coach is good enough, to get a few wins, but Tyreek Hill could change all of that too, right? I'm not trying to be a realist.
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek Hill's a damn good player, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this really comes down to like a few games for both teams.
Yeah, and actually this does bring up a point that I think the Patriots are the upset the apple cart team, right? Because later in the season, when they put their rookie quarterback in, he's going to, gain some more experience. Maybe he has a good game and throws 3 touchdowns against one of these division teams. It could be Buffalo. I don't think it will be. But if it's the Jets or the Dolphins, then that other team is going to benefit from that, right? So it's really going to come down to...
Oh, and Buffalo's in play here too, right?
Yes.
They historically have dominated Miami and split with the Jets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That could very well be the difference if that repeats, right? And I think when we did our predictions, I had the Bills splitting with the Jets and beating Miami twice. So, I mean, it's very real, right? So, yeah, the games are very important for the Jets and Dolphins. But that means the Bills have to win the games too. If they have a season like they did last year, It's very possible that they don't win the division.
And that first place schedule is very tough, as we've said throughout the offseason. That we have the toughest schedule without a doubt in this division, and you gotta get over that. You're a good team. You're facing other good teams. You have to be able to beat the Baltimores, the Kansas Cities in the regular season, which for the most part the Bills have proven they can do, in order to have that advantage within your division and then obviously in your conference. So I just don't see. Well, obviously we're Bills fans. People always want to say, "Oh, you're biased," whatever. It's not that. We look at this objectively, okay? It's not like when we've been doing this podcast for 8 years now almost, and this is our 8th year. When the Bills were less than the Patriots, when the Patriots had Tom Brady, we weren't picking the Bills to beat the Patriots. We weren't picking them. We wanted them to. We would explain how they could if it happened, but most of the time we were realists about it. And now the Bills are a damn good team, and people need to respect us. The hate that this team is getting this year, I'm loving it. I'm loving the fuel on the fire, and this right here would be plastered in the locker room if I was, Sean McDermott, because this is ridiculous to me that the Jets are favored over the Bills in their own division when they haven't proven anything yet.
And you can't really base your predictions off historical data, but historically, the Dolphins and Jets have just not risen to the occasion. When the Patriots were good, the Jets won, I don't think they even won the division, right? Maybe once. Miami hasn't won the division since 2008? So it's like, and Miami had every opportunity to win it last year, but just faltered at the end. So there's no reason to believe that they're going to take that next step, be a dominant team.
Do you remember?
Dolphins were very surprising last year, but again, came up short.
The craziest stat that I love that came out was that the AFC East has 4 teams, right? The Jets, Bills, Dolphins, and Patriots. The New York Jets are in 5th place in terms of division wins. 5th place, because the Colts used to be in this division and have more AFC East titles than the New York Jets. So that's a pretty telling stat right there.
Yeah. And maybe they have that season this year. It wouldn't be so completely surprising, but they need a lot to happen from a 40-year-old quarterback who's coming off an injury. You know what I mean? They could do it. It seems like a long shot to me. All right. Anyway, AFC West, arguably the really think weakest division in football. What do you think?
Pretty weak. Yeah, I'd say it's definitely one of the weakest, with the Kansas City Chiefs saying, "What the heck?" You hear your background there.
Yeah, I got a fantasy draft going on in the background. That's what that is.
Nice. The Chiefs are going to run away with this division, right? And my hope is that they're handed it. Just give it to them, please. Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos suck so bad against the Chiefs this year that they are high as a kite coming into the playoffs thinking they're the best thing since sliced bread. Because last year, I think one of the things that helped them win it all was the fact that they were a little bit, they had to go through a grind, and this was the worst offense that they've had in a long time. Their defense was obviously very good, but worst offense they had in a long time, and it definitely got better this offseason because it couldn't get much worse. And now you look at, they have injury concerns, right, at wide receiver especially. They open the season against a tough Baltimore team who I think now has an edge over them based on the rosters as they sit right now. But in their division, I mean, the Chargers rebuilding completely with a new coach, and yes, they still have a good quarterback, but they're going to be a run-first team now, and they've got 16 running backs on the team, it seems. So they're going to be figuring stuff out there still. And the defense, who knows, right? The Raiders, a team whose roster I actually really like, but the question is, where can the quarterback position bring them? And they've gone with Minshew, I think, is named the starter, right? So that's going to be an interesting situation there. I like their weapons, I like what they can do, but what is their highest potential? I mean, 9 wins maybe. So can they really compete with the Chiefs? I don't know. The Broncos are the wild card to me here because I actually really love Bo Nix. I said it in our draft coverage on Built in Buffalo. I thought Bo Nix was better than Michael Penix, who obviously got drafted way higher, and not way higher, but higher. And to me, Bo Nix has he's earned that starting job there, and is more of a wild card for what can he do with the weapons around him and the team and a good coach in Denver, that might be able to beat the Chiefs once this year or take over from the Chargers and the Raiders. I'm sick of picking the Chargers and them being handed everything because of the roster and the guys that they have.
Right.
I'm going.
Don't steal my thunder. That's my point.
See, yeah, exactly. I'm going Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos, Chargers in this division. I actually think the Chargers finish last in this division.
Really?
Just because of that. And the Broncos, I mean, I think they're going to upset people and win more games than people think. The Raiders, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the Broncos finish above the Raiders, but I just think the Raiders are still good enough to finish second in this division. All 3 of those teams are going to be miles behind Kansas City. That's what matters the most.
Okay, I'll start with Kansas City. Obviously, I have them winning the division. But my thing with them, how many times can you reinvent yourself, and how much historically with dynasties, how long can you sustain success? Because there's so many distractions, right? We saw it last year. Taylor Swift's in the building. That brings a whole bunch of media stuff. And they've handled it really well. But how long can you handle that? Because the NFL is insanely competitive. You know what I mean? So when does it become too much? When does the locker room start to get, start turning on each other? I mean, we've just seen it in football. The Patriots somehow were immune to that, but all other teams who are considered dynasties have that falling out at some point. So for me, it's how long can it go on? And I mean, it seems like they're really all in on Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown with the injury. But is it an upgrade? It's still questionable to me. I mean, anytime you have a speedy player with Pat Mahomes, it's scary. But again, it looks like Pacheco, it's going to be Kelsey. They're going to play good defense. It's enough to get to the playoffs. Really, can they get to the Super Bowl is where I start to have, I don't know if they're a Super Bowl team this year. When you look at Baltimore, Cincinnati, Buffalo always plays with them really tough. It's just, can you repeat it? It doesn't feel like it can go on forever to me. The Chargers, I will not pick to win the division. I think I had them win the division last year because you're just waiting for Justin Herbert to become like an elite quarterback, and it just hasn't happened. He's a good quarterback, but like something's missing, right? It's like maybe it's coaching, maybe it's whatever it is. They come up short, right? So they burned me so many times now that I'm just not picking them to win anymore. I think I had them win the division last year. But
so what's your order then?
So I have Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders for me. I do like Sean Payton. I like Bo Nix with Sean Payton. If Bo Nix goes to a different team, it's different. But I think Bo Nix and Sean Payton works. I think Sean Payton's system, if you could think about the Drew Brees with Alvin Kamara, that works. I think that works in today's NFL just as good as it did back then, maybe even better, right? But he now had a full off season to kind of implement his system, get everyone trained up. I know Bo Nix will have some growing pains, but he's kind of an older college quarterback. He's got a lot of playing time in college. I think it'll be shorter than most, right? That learning curve. So I like the Broncos third, and the Raiders. You lose Josh Jacobs. I thought he was really their,
bell
cow.
Bell cow. They definitely went to him.
And I mean, everyone's expecting them to get a quarterback somehow, some way, and just never happened. So now I'm looking at them going, well, how long? You can't win games this way, right? It's really the coach willing the players. It's a good story, but really the offense has no talent outside of Devontae Adams, right? Brock Bowers is interesting to me. The two tight ends will be interesting, but again, you need a lot from Zamir White, and
a lot of people are high on Zamir White. I'm not one of those people in fantasy, at least, but yeah.
And we'll see, but I just think the Broncos are in a better spot there. So I'll take them third. I'll take Raiders fourth. I just want the Bills to beat Kansas City in the playoffs. That's really all I want.
Yes, right. Yes. And this is, not a great start because they're going to be probably the 1 seed playing at home based on their division alone and the matchups that they have. But there's a chance. There's a chance because they do have other tough games on their schedule other than their divisional opponents.
Right.
Just puts more pressure on the rest of the AFC to try and get more wins, including against your division. So yeah, that's tough. But only one team coming out of there for the playoffs. I think we can both comfortably agree on that one.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, 2 more divisions to go. Next one up, NFC North. Detroit Lions plus 130, Packers plus 230, Chicago Bears plus 280, Minnesota Vikings plus 1100.
Yeah, I think obviously the injury to J.J. McCarthy shifted these odds a lot more. And I think this is probably the division I'm most comfortable with. Most comfortable with these odds right here. Give me the Detroit Lions to win. Give me Green Bay to be good, make the playoffs. The Bears to surprise some people and win some games, but they're not ready to quite compete with the other two yet. And the Minnesota Vikings to be in dead last place comfortably now that they're in the situation they're in, despite the talent that they have on offense. I mean, Aaron Jones, they bring him in, right? They've got 2 great receivers in Addison, who, yes, had a bit of an injury, but should be fine. And, Jefferson, obviously the best wide receiver, if you ask me, in football. But with Sam Darnold throwing them the ball, is that going to limit this team? I absolutely think so. They have questions on defense as well. And again, when you're playing the likes of one of the best built teams in football in the Detroit Lions, in my mind, both on offense and defense, and what they do, well-balanced talent, every position, it seems. Again, talk about a team who drafted in the top so much that they have such a talented roster. That's the Lions, right? They're there now. And Green Bay, a team that has done it their way, kind of the silent receivers. And, yes, the quarterback we drafted 10 years ago, who's now playing finally, right? And yeah, I think that those two teams have risen to the top. The Bears, the X factor is how long will it take Caleb Williams to adjust? Even if he comes out hot, will teams adjust to him? So I'm not ready to put some excitement around the Bears other than they'll be a fun team to watch, just with, the likes of Rome Odunze and so many questions there.
Tremaine Edmonds, right? Yeah. He's so fun.
Yes. The defense. Yeah. I mean, they're going to be good, but not good enough.
Swift.
Yeah. So much talent. Again, that roster is Chicago has a really, really good team, but Green Bay and Detroit are that much better in my mind. And yeah, so I like this just the way it is.
Okay, that's fair. The only difference I have is I have the Packers winning the division.
Whoa, really?
Just because I think the addition, well, Jordan Love, obviously, start there. He showed amazing flashes last year. If that carries over, they're going to be dangerous, right? Because the quarterback position will dominate the division, it seems like. And I think Jordan Love has that capability. And what we saw last year, I mean, he really took a step. Is this guy elite is what you start asking yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of waiting to answer that. But I mean, you saw he's in that category if it continues. So I'm predicting that does continue. Packers also adding Josh Jacobs, right? I think that with Green Bay's system, he's going to thrive in that system, right? So I love that for Green Bay. The young receiving core they have getting a little older, right? Not so young anymore. If Christian Watson stays healthy, he's dangerous. You know, I've been high on him for years.
Your favorite guy.
But there's also Romeo Dubes. I mean, Jalen Reed. I mean, they're starting to build something there. It's been a long build for them, but I think they're finally starting to get somewhere. So I just think I like Jordan Love over Jared Goff. I think that comes down to maybe a win or two, but I think the Packers win. Detroit Lions going to be very similar to what we saw last year, which is damn good. Right?
Yeah.
Very good. So
NFC Championship,
they're going to be just fine. I just think it's going to be a tight race, but I like the quarterback. The Bears, again, their roster's stacked. Can they put it all together? It's really, when they drafted Josh Allen, the Bills drafted Josh Allen, it was like, we don't really care about wins. We just want to see the quarterback get better every week. They're going to be in that kind of mode, right? And they might start winning games late, but there's going to be some mistakes, right? And I think, I think that holds them back from being a competitive team this year, but they're going to be like maybe 7-8 wins.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vikings, again, they're a super talented roster, but I mean, they didn't figure out the quarterback position. And really JJ McCarthy going down, I think it hurts them because that development time is so important. You almost, when you draft a quarterback, it's almost like you give up. We're not going to be competitive this year, but next year, I feel like that process is now pushed back a year. So it's like just really difficult, to come off injury as a rookie quarterback. So that's going to be a lot to overcome for JJ McCarthy. And we've had the Sam Darnold conversation numerous times. Like, we want him to be good, and he looks the part, but just when he gets on the field, it's just the decision making is not there, period, and that holds them back, right? So, so that's my order for the NFC North.
And remember, the Bills have Minnesota's second round pick, so the worse they are, the higher up that goes. So we are unfortunately rooting against Minnesota this year.
We'll take it. Sometimes you get lucky, you need that luck. All right, last one for the night. AFC South. Houston Texans, the obvious favorite, plus 105. Jacksonville Jaguars, plus 250. The Colts, plus 340. And the Tennessee Titans, plus 1,000. Tough one.
This is one of I've been saying this all off season as well. I think that this division could be wide open. If somebody told me today the Titans are actually going to win this division, it wouldn't surprise me. I would not be like, oh my God, that's impossible. It can happen. Am I predicting it? No, but I certainly believe that this is another division where all these teams are right there. The Colts, one of the teams that I think are being underrated right now because they have a quarterback coming back from injury in Richardson who looked unbelievably dynamic in the time we saw him. Obviously, that has to be maintained. You got to be able to stay healthy, above all else. But even beyond that, they have, a good running back now. They've got the team I like the receivers. They have a decent defense, as they showed last year, who can come up clutch when needed and make big plays, right? The Colts were one of the big play surprise teams last year for me. And this year, when you have the quarterback that you want there again, that's going to bring that up a level. So to me, they're the biggest rising team in this division. The Texans now, obviously, CJ Stroud bursts onto the scene. I'm the only person on God's green earth who said that team was going to be good. And now everybody wants to
remember that. Yes.
And now everybody wants to take credit for it, right? Yeah. I was the only one who said that team is going to be good. CJ Stroud is going to be ready to play in this NFL,
right.
And he's going to take it by storm.
Well, you were high on the Texans before CJ Stroud.
Exactly. I loved guys like Nico Collins, that defense. There's a lot of guys I feel are underrated on that team and still feel that way. The problem now is this is year 2, and teams know who CJ Stroud is. And I think he's going to come back down to earth just a little bit because my take on him coming out of the draft was he's the most NFL ready. but he doesn't have as high a ceiling, right? Meaning there's not going to be a ton of growth. He's going to come in ready to go, and he is who he is. Now I feel like there is going to be some normalization, call it regression, whatever, a few more interceptions. He's
Sounds
got
like Trevor Lawrence a little bit.
Exactly, right? So he's got more talent around him, more things going on. But can he maintain now that expectations are there? Can he maintain it with that offense? And looking at this division, the Jaguars to me are the biggest question mark. The biggest question mark. They should have ran away with the AFC last year, and they choked big time. And that, like you said, their quarterback, I can't trust the guy. Trevor Lawrence came in so hyped. He's looked consistent. He looks good. And then he looks like average Joe. This offseason, he gets paid buco bucks, the big quarterback contract. They're keeping him around. He's their guy. And I don't think he's done anything to earn that, quite frankly.
Right.
And now, that team is also so much talent on offense now. They got, one of my favorite players in the draft. They got so much talent that they already had. I think Kirk is going to have a rebound season as a guy who was 1,000+ and then dealt with injury and had another guy on the roster who's now gone, and Ridley. The defense for Jacksonville, you have one of the best players on defense in Joshua Hines. Allen changed his name this offseason, right? The other Josh Allen, he got sick of being called that. So I think
so our Josh Allen won. Our Josh Allen,
won the Josh Allen off.
Josh Allen, we'll take that.
But that's okay. I mean, like it or not, the guy is very talented. Also got paid, deserved it, because to me, he is one of the best defensive players in the NFL. And yeah, I mean, so he could take over alone on defense. He's got pieces around him. It's so hard to predict this division. And I've been a Texans fan for a long time, rooting for that team. And now I'm like biting my tongue, because I truly think that the Jacksonville Jaguars should win this division. They should be the team that's
surprising.
They should do it. They are better all around. They have more experience, right? The Texans, I think, are coming down a notch, and the Jags need to show that they can go up a notch, right? Because they choked last year to give the Texans the win. Now they have a lot more to prove this year. And so I guess I'm going to do it. I'm picking the Jags to win the division. Houston makes the playoffs as a wild card team. The Colts are right there, but just missed this year, and the Titans in 4th place.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising. I don't think a lot of people are high in the Jags this year, but again, they were good last year. It's the same team. Maybe they're a little bit better, a little bit worse, but they're competitive in this division. And like you said, they should have ran away with the division last year because the schedule was the easiest schedule in the whole league. That was why we thought they would get more wins than Kansas City or Buffalo, but it just didn't work out for them. But yeah, this division in my eyes, it's just quarterback productions when their quarterbacks are young is so unpredictable. Like, which quarterback will be the best of this group in 4 years? We know, okay, Trevor Lawrence is basically medium, average, maybe sometimes above average, but that's what he is. I don't think it's going to get better or worse for him. He's just an average to above average quarterback. Anthony Richardson's the one has all the potential in the world. And really, if he comes out and plays well and kind of shows his athletic ability, both with arm talent, with his running ability, and also picking up the offense, I think he really could surprise a lot of people and carry that team, into the playoffs. I really do believe that. But again, because he's such an athlete, this guy's special when it comes to being an athlete. But can he put it all together? So many question marks. And like we talked about with CJ Stroud, with great rookie year, but where do you go from here? Can he get better? Will it be the same? The same's probably good enough for them, right? So I have the Texans number 1. I have the Colts number 2, Jaguars 3, and Titans 4. And we're both low on the Titans, but again, I think their offense has upgraded, right?
Yeah.
So again, how high is Will Levis's ceiling? When I watched him, I was like, well, he's got a little room for growth, but will it be huge like an Anthony Richardson? I don't see that. But you saw the moxie. I mean, seems like a good leader, but again, can he will his team to the playoffs this year? I don't see it. but I wouldn't be surprised if they had finished third in the division, right? Because Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, and there's other pieces there now. But again, and if Anthony Richardson just tanks, the Colts are last. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how this division is. So I think Anthony Richardson's going to have a good season, maybe not great. I think the Texans are just absolutely stacked on both sides of the ball. They have a great head coach. So I think Texans win the division, make the playoffs, maybe probably win a playoff game or two. And then, Colts for me was second, Jaguars and Titans. Just because the Jaguars don't impress me anymore. I've had enough of them. They're like the Chargers.
So you definitely don't have you definitely don't have the Jags making the playoffs, but do the Colts in your scenario? No. So just the Texans coming out here. I have Texans and Jags. Obviously, Jags winning, Texans making it as a wild card. Okay, so in the AFC, then so that leaves. I have one wild card. You have none. If we go to the East, I said the Bills. Obviously, we both have the Bills.
Probably.
And then
in my scenario, it's Bills Jets.
And in mine, it's Bills Dolphins as the wild card. So now I have 2 wild card spots filled, which means only one North team for me is making it, or one wild card team from the North is making it.
Yeah,
so that for me is going to be who I predicted was, Cincy to win the division and Cleveland to be in second. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah,
I can't believe I have Baltimore out of the playoffs right now, but that's got to be my boldest preseason.
Well, I think Baltimore wins the division, so it'd be the Bengals and the Browns making the playoffs.
Bengals and because you have an extra wild card.
3 out of the AFC North.
Right. Which
Kansas City, Texans. I think the Jets. Wouldn't be surprised if it's the Dolphins, but I think it comes out of the East. And Bills.
Yeah. Excellent. That should shape up well. And obviously we didn't talk about Kansas City, but those other 3 teams we didn't have in contention. And we do think Kansas City's ultimately the favorite for the 1 seed together, just based on that division and the wins they're going to rack up there. So interesting. And in the NFC, if we recap quickly, let's see, NFC East.
I can run through it for you. You had the division winners, and then we'll go through wild card.
Yep.
Your division winners in the NFC were the 49ers, Eagles, Falcons, Lions.
Mm-hmm.
And what would your wild card be from that?
Well, let's see. So in the East, I had Dallas as a fringe, but I think they make it just based on that. I don't have anybody from the South. The North, I have Green Bay, obviously, as a wild card team. So that's 2. And then, so who does that leave for my third? Which team am I missing? No, I don't have another team in the South making
Seahawks.
The Seahawks. Thank you. Yes, that's the other team. So the Seahawks were the other team that I'm high on. So those are the 3 playoff or the 3 wildcard teams I would have in the NFC, which seems like they could all make some noise as well. So except the Cowboys, I'll probably have them losing in the first round to whoever they play.
It's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. They're kind of like the Bills.
Yeah, right.
Terrible. They make it exciting. I mean, the Bills will at least win 1 and lose 1, but
yeah, they haven't
kind of similar. For me, it was NFC was 49ers, Eagles, Falcons, Packers, division winners. And then I had the Lions, Seahawks, and the Cowboys making the wild card.
Mm-hmm.
Comes down to the Cowboys, Bucks.
Yeah. And for me, in the NFC, I think the Eagles and the 49ers are the 2 best teams. Yeah. But I think they meet before the championship game in the playoffs. Okay. And only one can advance, right? So I think the Falcons are in the NFC championship game against one of those 2 teams.
Falcons.
Yeah, the Falcons are there, baby. And the Eagles are going to be the other team that I pick in the NFC. It's hard to go against the 49ers, but I think the Eagles they're both the teams that are all in that I said, right? So the Eagles are going to be there against the Falcons. And
right. The Eagles' biggest question is when things get tough in December and January, can their coach hold the team together?
That's right.
Again, maybe they learn from past mistakes. Maybe they have a repeat of last year, and then you got to get rid of the coach. That's kind of how it is, right? And we know Kyle Shanahan will have his guys ready, and I think that might be the difference there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, good scenario. I mean, it's definitely Eagles, 49ers agree 100%. I like the Lions to sneak in there. And again, if we have this dream season from Jordan Love that we've seen flashes of, don't be surprised if they sneak in there as well. But Eagles for me, clear favorites and my Super Bowl pick.
Mm.
For the AFC, again, I think it's I like the Ravens this year for my Super Bowl pick.
Wow.
I'm just high on them.
So I'm not even, my prediction was they don't even make the playoffs, which I think is bold even for me. You know, I'm still like, okay, I'm not like pushing that narrative. That's just how it worked out in my standings, right? That I could easily swap the Browns and the Ravens, right? And say the Ravens make the playoffs and the Browns don't. That's just not how it was predicted.
I just don't know. How can you look at this Ravens roster and not think that they're
right? They've been
the best roster in the league, at least in the AFC.
Because they've been the benefactor of circumstance, right? Put them against Cincy at their best and see what they can do. Put them against the Browns at their best and see what they can do. We have not seen that, and they barely got through it last year when it was handed to them. So that's why I don't have they lost a lot. They lost coaches. They lost offense. They lost defense. I think that they lost more than they added. That's why I'm low on the Ravens. And now put up or shut up time when you're playing real teams with real rosters, right? And I just don't know that I trust that they can get it done in that situation. They have been one of the more overrated teams. Yes, they're good, but they're not that damn good. They just been the luck of circumstance. And in the AFC, I mean, I'm going to pick the Bills, right? I'm taking the Bills in the Super Bowl. I'm taking the Bills over the Cincinnati Bengals, the team that I think is going to be there. And I hope beats Kansas City before the Bills ever have to play them, so that we can, get over that narrative and just move on. And although the Bengals are another team that match up pretty well against the Bills.
AFC's wide open.
I don't want to have to play those teams, but I'd love it to be. Give me Miami, give me the Texans, give me give me those teams. I'll gladly beat them. But yeah, it's going to be.
Well, Miami's in that same boat. They lost a lot of defensive players, but we were talking about the AFC being so wide open last year, but it's even more wide open this year.
Yeah, it's competitive
with the emergence of C.J. Stroud in that conversation. I think there's just so many good quarterbacks, so many good offenses, and really, I mean, looking around, I just think Baltimore's best on both sides of the ball. Look, when you have Josh Allen, the Bills always have a chance to win the Super Bowl. They just do, right? They're going to be in it. And one or two plays in the playoffs could be the difference of the Bills going to the Super Bowl versus other team.
At least tell me you have us losing to Kansas City or something and not Baltimore.
Well, I kind of had your Eagles 49ers scenario where in my head, because this is a defense mechanism.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Acceptable. At this
Kansas City is going to play the Texans and lose.
Whoa!
And then the Bills will have the Texans in the championship game, right? That's my dream scenario, but I've also come to terms with the reality that the Bills roster turned over so much this year. It's a long, long hill to climb for them to be a Super Bowl team.
Why?
Always have a chance with Josh Allen. Well, just because continuity's king, right?
But the defense is still damn good, and you still have a defensive coach.
I mean, do we know that?
Your offense is still elite. Your offense is still elite.
Got to put it to the test. But that's just where we're at. And I feel like Baltimore's just built their roster better. So if I'm putting money on it, I'm going Baltimore right now. Let me watch the Bills for 6 weeks.
Do you think Baltimore beats the Bills in the playoffs? Because I think that's one of the better matchups for the Bills.
Again, like Baltimore. I said, when you have Josh Allen, it comes down to a play or two. But Baltimore has way more people to turn to.
So you would pick if it were Baltimore versus Buffalo. I understand in your scenario.
I wouldn't feel good about it.
Maybe Buffalo loses to Kansas City, and it's Kansas City versus the Ravens again, and you have the Ravens.
Divisional round of the playoff. I don't feel good with the Bills playing the Bengals, the Chiefs, or the Ravens.
Really?
No.
Of those three, the Ravens are the best matchup in my mind, and then Cincy, and then Kansas City.
Right. So the odds are not good. We know they can't beat Cincinnati.
Well, we haven't matched up well against them.
I think they can beat Kansas City. It's just fate, luck, whatever you want to call it. It's not on their side.
Exactly. So I don't want to be in that scenario again.
Baltimore's kind of an unknown, but I
like the way. Whoa, pause. How is Baltimore an unknown? The first coach who figured out Lamar Jackson was Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott showed the league how to beat Lamar Jackson.
No, I understand.
And then when we played him again, we beat him again. So I mean, Sean McDermott to me knows how to shut down.
Sure, no, that's
Baltimore.
fine. But this is Lamar Jackson's different. He's grown as a player. He's a passer nowadays, right? That's a whole nother aspect to his game. I mean, you have to cover Derrick Henry and Lamar, and Zay Flowers is uncoverable, in my opinion. I mean, this kid's going to be good, right?
You
I
think
just like.
Derrick Henry stays healthy the whole year?
I mean,
I hope so.
I
I
mean,
never
it's
wish
a risk for
injury.
every team. He's historically
As a
proven,
running back, though, running backs, they fall off,
Sure.
man. They fall off a
But
cliff. They don't just fall.
he'll be a
and
productive runner. He'll go through his injuries, maybe minor or
Okay.
but he'll be productive for them. I really do think
He
that.
certainly garners attention, which is a good thing for any
Mhm.
offense, right? That's what you want.
Right. But I mean, if the Ravens line up and pound the ball down the Bills' throat, the Bills aren't really built for that type of football.
Running the ball, you mean? Yeah.
They're a finesse defense, right? They're designed for
Agree.
coverage and disguise.
But you don't think that we
right?
could stack the box and come after Lamar still and
Oh, sure. I mean,
put
look,
on the pressure?
you can confuse them, but I think they have a lot more people to turn to on offense than they have historically, right? You can turn to Mark Andrews, you can turn to Zay Flowers, you can turn to Derrick Henry. These are all reliable,
Confuse the
offensive
quarterback
weapons.
and you win. And in that situation, I'm
Who
taking
are you
Josh
turning
Allen
to
over
on the Bills'
Lamar.
offense?
I will take Josh Allen over Lamar in those situations 1,000
Sure, yeah.
times out of 1,000.
Me too.
1,000.
Collectively, the Baltimore defense is stacked. You know what I mean? Like I feel like the team.
And what coaches did they lose
more
last year?
balanced.
They lost their coaches. They became head coaches. Their
Sure, but Baltimore
might still be good.
Baltimore's produced so many head coaches. As long as John Harbaugh's there running the show, they know what
Agreed.
they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Okay, we'll see. They lost some players. They on offense, defense. I think they lost more than they gained. That's why. I mean, we're polar opposites on that team, man.
Well,
we are polar opposites.
The thing is, it's so close, right? It comes down to one play, So how can you predict it? I'm just telling you. I like the way Baltimore looks. I like the way they built
Of course,
their team.
they got it. Yeah.
The Bills are going through kind of a turnover year. Feels like that's kind of the reality of the situation. We have no idea what the team's going to look like in week 6, week 12. But here, sitting at the beginning of the season, it just feels like Baltimore's in a better position.
So who wins your Super Bowl then? You got the Ravens and the Eagles in your Super Bowl.
I like the Ravens
to beat the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles, I think, are just stacked. But again, the coaching thing, I just think they get out coached. John Harbaugh's been there, done that many times. We know the Eagles have been there too, but I like John Harbaugh in that scenario.
All right, I'm taking Bills over Falcons, so that's my Super Bowl. I think the
Falcons.
Bills. Yes,
they ain't gonna make the play. No way.
Okay. Count them out, just like the Lions last year. Again, a team that 2 years ago I said would be that team at that time. Right. I said they were going to be good.
If you said Lions in the Super Bowl, it's not that crazy.
2 years ago, though, I said that. Remember at the end of the season, I said this team is going to be in the NFC Championship game next year, and they were. I said it. It's on fucking record, right? Same thing last year with the Texans. I said that. And I'm telling you, man, the Falcons. Remember last season when Kirk Cousins went down, we did a show where we said potential landing spots for Kirk Cousins. And what was one of the teams that I mentioned that I said I would really like him to go to? The Atlanta Falcons. For this reason, they have untapped potential at every position on the team. They've added to the defense. They added to the offense. I think that team is poised and ready to pounce in a conference that is wide open, because the Eagles have their issues of staying consistent, because the 49ers have this issue of, getting there all the way and following through as well, because the Lions, are still green to this and getting used to being a good team. There is an opening in the NFC as well for different reasons. Lots of openings in the AFC to make the playoffs and make a run, but it's challenging there for the reasons of interdivisional rivalries, whereas in the NFC, we're pretty sure who's going to make the playoffs. It's just a matter of what happens in the playoffs. Could be unpredictable.
Right. I feel like if the Falcons play the Eagles, they lose. I feel like if they play the 49ers, they lose. I do. I mean, Kirk Cousins' playoff record is not good.
The Eagles are a better roster, definitely. The Falcons have a better roster.
Well, there's also coaching, right? This is Raheem Morris's kind of first shot. I think the Falcons will be good in the coming years, but to say this year is the year they make the Super Bowl over the Lions, over the Eagles, over the 49ers, I don't see it.
Yeah, okay. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. That's my
Tune
bet.
in.
And again, I
Anyway,
said this a year and a half ago. So yeah, that the Falcons, if they got him, would be good, or whatever.
yeah.
Almost a year ago, in like 6 weeks when
I
he
mean,
had
you
the
can go
injury.
back and look, but no one really watches the show anyway. So.
Exactly. But I'm telling you, man, it's there. It's on record.
I know you said it, but
Yeah.
fan base does. Anyway, Thursday night we have a football game, Kansas City, and who are they playing? Let me look that up.
Ravens. Yeah,
Ravens.
the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah,
Your
so there you
team,
go.
your
Good to see
Super
it
Bowl
up
team.
front and center. But yeah, so
It's
tune in
tough,
with
though,
us
because
next week.
They're catching
'cause
them at a
we're
good time with
right.
Hollywood
Oh, it'll be a
Brown
fun
being hurt,
matchup.
and yeah.
The Lions played the Chiefs last year. That was fun because the Lions won. It's going to be fun when the Ravens win.
Yeah. But they also won the Super Bowl still, so that's
yeah, I know exactly. Yeah. Anyway,
Anyway.
we'll have a show before the game. We'll go through our week 1 picks against the spread. Show structure similar to tonight. Go through every game, talk a little bit about it, make our picks, and we'll get you ready for the Arizona Cardinals as the Bills start their
Home
season.
opener, baby.
Yes, going to be a fun one. And yeah, so tune in with us. I think we'll be on about 7.
Yeah, we got to get
it depends on Anthony's job, Anthony's
Yeah.
family, my family, my job.
Yeah,
But
so we adjust.
we will be
we'll be
pregame.
there.
But here we go, football season.
Let's
It's here.
go, baby. It is on, baby. We are finally here. Are you ready for some football? The Hoof Podcast has you covered, baby, because we are ready. It is here. We're going to be, making those picks for you all season. I'll still be doing my pick 6 segment as well, so follow along with that. That'll be posted separately, but it'll be available in all platforms, and you'll be able to see and follow my picks throughout the year. Again, I've been phenomenal over the last few years, so make some money with me this year, hopefully. And yeah, as always, thanks for kicking it with us.
Later.